Hi, I'm Matt Belford with Capnos Knives. Welcome back to the workshop. We're going to continue on the series of working on this knife, and today we're going to be drilling the holes for the handle scales, and we're going to be actually fixing up the handles and gluing it on. So we're going to get started. First thing we're going to do, which I know I didn't show it in the video, but this is a two-part handle scale. I epoxied on the Moon Glow to the that stuff's called C-Tech. It's a new material I'm going to try out. I haven't tested it before, but we'll see. But I went ahead and epoxied that on. I didn't show it just for the simple fact that it's going to be the same process as when we're epoxying it onto the knife itself. So whenever you're doing that, you want to make sure that you've got good clearance on both sides of the knife. You got extra scale material on both sides with both scales. With that, we're going to move over to the drill press. If I was using a tapered tang, now I keep a block down in the middle of my vise. If I was doing a tapered tang, I would tilt it up just a few degrees to compensate for the taper in the tang to keep my holes still going straight down. But since this is a flat tang because of the fire steel that we're putting in there, don't have to do that. And we're pretty good squared up there. Really light pressure. I've messed up some of this Moon Glow before trying to cut it too fast. It is not very saw friendly or drill friendly. The C-Tech, again, I don't know anything about it. I've never used it before today, so this is all new experience to me, but I'm just going to take it easy on the stuff just in case. Extra passes in there just to clear it out. And you got your first hole. Then get my pin stock, fits in the hole nicely. I'll waller the hole out a little bit more. Now I'm going to move over to the bandsaw and chop out a few pieces of pin stock. I should have done that already, but I'm going to just chop a couple pieces out so that I can pin it in there as I work. Alright, so I've got a pin stock in place. Again, you just want to get that pin in there, make sure everything's squared up, make sure you still got plenty of space around the edge of the knife. Get positioned in there. Again, just a nice light touch on the drill. Power on it. There we go. Now I'm going to use the same process for the other side. The only difference being I'm going to include that scale when I move to the other side. So let me get set up and I'll be right back. Alright, so I've got the knife lined up. Got the pin going through the top scale, through the blade, and it's just buttoned down to the bottom scale. So you can see it'll kind of pivot around because I'm holding the drill press down through the top scale, through the blade, and hitting it where it's going to drill through. So you want to make sure you're perfectly squared up and that you're not exposing any of the metal where you don't want to. Go ahead and back off, make another hole. Got the scales lined up and got a hole there. So now I can just put that pin through the top scale, through the knife, through the bottom scale, and hold it in place with that hole, remove the front pin, and do the same thing again. Make sure it's all squared up. So whenever I'm using pins of multiple sizes, Like in some cases I'll use a 1/4 inch thong hole, or in this case I'm using just a little 1/8 inch pin down for these individual legs. I'll go ahead and finish both scales out on one side before I worry about changing drill bits and move on to the other sides. Process is exactly the same, so I'm not going to waste the video time showing it to you. I'm just going to go ahead and drill the holes and get the pins ready for the next step. Alright, so there you have it. Got all my pinholes drilled, and of course my fire steel is going to go right up between those two. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to take the knife completely out of it, put the scales back together with the pins, and I'm going to move over to the belt grinder, and I'm going to start to finish up the head of the scales. Reason being, when it comes to final finish of this knife, you're not going to be able to get up to this section of the knife with your sanders or your grinders, so you want to finish that part before you do anything else. So I'm going to finish that up, put it back together, make sure everything looks good, and then we'll move on to gluing it up. I already can't say I'm too impressed with the C-Tech stuff. You can see where the aluminum grid inside it is bent up and not exactly straight. I really have no idea how that's going to affect the final outcome, how it's going to look, but so far I'm not too thrilled about it. So this can be a tedious process if you don't do it right the first time. After you grind it, put it back on the knife, check it, make sure it's where you want it to be. And if it's not, go back, fine tune. As always, it's better to take off too little than too much, so don't be afraid to keep going back and taking off more. But that is about perfect for me. So from here, I'll go ahead, put the scales back together, grab out some hand sandpaper, go with some 220 grit, sand it down, and work my way up to 400 grit, and I'll take it to the buffer, get that part shined up, and then be ready to epoxy the handles. Alright, so I went ahead and sanded it down to 400 grit. Now you're really starting to see how the contrast in the aluminum and the resin are going to pop out, but still overall I'm just not impressed with the workmanship on this stuff because of the inconsistencies in the aluminum grid that's inside of it. But hopefully once this whole thing's all said and done, it still looks pretty awesome. I hope it does, because I spent a lot of time on this knife and I'd hate to screw it up. With any of these resins, a quick pop on some white polishing compound is really all you need once you've sanded it down to make it shine. And there you have it. It's like glass, and it is starting to look pretty cool, if I do say so. Like I said, just not thrilled about the inconsistency in the material inside, but really like the way the light's catching off of it. And this is the first real glimpse of what you're going to end up with when it's all said and done. So I'm going to get the bench cleaned off, get ready to glue this thing together.